In 1977, following a 5-year absence, Nottingham Forest were promoted back into the top flight of English football. Within 3 short years, they were league winners, cup winners, and European champions.
Francis scores!
The extraordinary managerial partnership of Brian Clough and Peter Taylor had built a side to conquer all before them.
You and your profession just might recognise that we are a good side.
These were halcyon days for English football, and Nottingham Forest were leading the charge. After just 44 days in charge of Leeds United, Brian Clough had been sacked. But despite the controversies around Clough, Nottingham Forest felt fortunate to enlist him as their manager in January 1975.
The club itself wasn't in great shape, I must admit. We'd got relegated in 1972, the year that I'd come to the football club as an 18, 19-year-old, and we'd stayed there for a few years.
There is no immediate changes. It's not an overnight job, football.
I would say I have to be surprised that we could have attracted such a brilliant character, such a charismatic character, and such a great manager.
I've got to get to know them a little bit better, try and get a little bit out of them. I think they've got to, got to produce.
We got him, I think, with a big point to prove. Being sacked at Leeds United, is obviously holding a grudge, which was good.
We had one thing in common, of course. We both want success. The committee wants success and I want success for Nottingham Forest.
Joining Clough at Forest was midfielder John McGovern, who had played under him at Hartlepool, Derby and Leeds.
He threw a ball at me in the dressing room before the start of one match. We were all wondering who was going to be captain. And I caught it, and he literally said, "Oh, you caught that well. You might as well take the lads out." And a year after he was manager of Nottingham Forest, Peter Taylor rejoined him, and that was really like the blue touch paper and stand well back.
Clough and assistant Peter Taylor were a formidable partnership. They had turned Derby County from second division strugglers into first division champions and guided them to a European Cup semi-final. After a spell apart, they had reunited, and at Nottingham Forest were ready to forge their greatest team yet.
Good cop, bad cop. You go in for a contract, and Peter say to you, "What's your vices? Do you like women? Do you drink? Do you gamble?" And then the manager come in the room. He say, "Well, I'd like a vice, boss." He said, "Well, I hear you like gambling." And I go, "Where's he got that from?" So Peter told him what your vice was.
I think 2 people can do a job better than one for a start, and his expertise in finding players and having a knowledge of football was second to none at that particular time.
There was a lot of untapped talent. You know, you're talking about John Robertson, who was, second to none really. Tony Woodcock, Viv Anderson, Martin O'Neill, Ian Bowyer, all these people were here.
In May 1977, the potential began to be realised. Forest were promoted and were back in top-flight football after 5 years out of it.
I don't think people rated their chances very good at all. You would have been hoping that maybe mid-table or something like that would be an extreme success, really, for a team that just scraped up in third position. But we went up there, and first game was Everton. Then I remember for the first 20 minutes, I couldn't get my breath. Then we got a goal, Peter Wood scored. Then we settled down, played terrific football, won 3-1 in the end.
Clough and Taylor soon made additions to the squad, including, significantly, a goalkeeper.
There's no instructions for me as a goalkeeper. We knew we wanted to play football, but by the same token, if I wanted to kick the ball long, I'd see the opportunity. We did have quite a bit of pace up front.
The directions from the management were simple. Do your job and get the ball to John Robertson whenever possible. With players such as Ian Bowyer and David Needham in the squad as well, this was a group that would take the First Division by storm.
We were flying, absolutely flying. But there was lots of doubters around, and I'm deep down probably because it was the whole First Division at that time was essentially new to us, to a lot of the players, that we wondered how long we could maybe keep this going.
As Christmas approached, Forest were top of the league, but next up was a trip to Old Trafford.
That's the greatest performance I've ever played in a team. Just as simple as that. We were awesome that day.
Played in for Peter With, and Woodcock scores! Tony Woodcock for Forest.
We were mesmeric that afternoon. Really, really fantastic.
It's on. Surely he'll score. It's 3-0.
And we scored 4. It was just an incredible performance.
Put it through by Gebel. Tony Woodcock for on goal. It's 4.
There was a great freedom about the team. We were counter-attacking, not only with great skill, a lot of pace. It was great to be part of it.
It wasn't just in the league that Forest were impressing. By March 1978, they'd earned themselves the right to challenge realistically for trophies. In under a year, Clough's men had gone from the Second Division to League Cup finalists. But the boss would not be letting anyone get carried away. Around this team, complacency was strictly forbidden.
Despite the fact we played reasonably well for 5 or 6, 7 months, at this precise moment, we haven't won anything.
Forest's opponents were the domestic and European champions, Liverpool.
They were the real pedigree, you know, they were the real deal. If you had any ambitions to win anything, you knew you had to get past Liverpool.
And adding to the difficulty of the task ahead, goalkeeper Peter Shilton was cup-tied.
That spirit and belief within the camp, Chris Wood's coming into the side as a young, inexperienced goalkeeper performed miracles for a player so young.
After a 0-0 draw, the teams replayed at Old Trafford, where John Robertson's penalty settled the tie. Forest had their first silverware in 19 years, and a bigger prize would soon follow. The title could be won with 5 games remaining at Coventry City.
It was a day that I'll always remember at Coventry because, you know, we were put under a lot of pressure, but there was a day.
Wallace. In goes Ferguson. Oh, what a save by Peter Shilton. Absolutely fantastic.
With a bar, and I think the great thing was he actually just sank on his knees. If so, I can't believe what's happened, how he saved that.
I said before we kicked the ball, I thought we'd qualify for Europe, no more. And that would have been an achievement. But having signed Shilton, I said then that anything was possible. He's by far the greatest goalkeeper in the world, and has been for the last 10 years.
At the end of the match, which ended up 0-0 and we'd won the First Division, I turned to Brian Clough and just said, "Well done, boss, we've won it." And he matter-of-factly said to me, "Oh yeah, that's right."
We got the point at Coventry, we got on the coach and came home. There was no champagne, no nothing, it was a job done.
Even though we won with a few games in hand, it was just an incredible feeling, absolutely incredible to go and to win the championship, considering from the position that we were in a year previous.
Forest could now look forward to visiting foreign climes in the following season's European Cup, or so they thought.
When the draw comes out, we're drawn against Liverpool.
We're looking forward to going to Madrid or Paris, you know, and not Liverpool.
They were obviously big favourites, so it was a bit of a downer really, I think.
But Brian Clough turned it round, he said, because in their dressing room they'll be going, "Not them again."
At the City ground, Forest gained a 2-0 first leg lead, thanks to Gary Birtles and Colin Barrett.
It was a great achievement. They were the yardstick. I think Graham Souness or somebody said prior to that game, Forest who were Forest, you know. So rightly so, because we were just the upstarts coming up and trying to get to where they'd achieved it for many, many years.
Well, you know, I say it begrudgingly because I think we were still the best team, but they were a really difficult outfit to break down. They had a system, they had a great goalkeeper, Larry Lloyd, Kenny Burns at the back, never went near the halfway line, never mind over it. We had a real problem breaking them down.
At Anfield, Forest held on for a 0-0 draw. The European champions were out.
I don't think at that time we realised just how good they were. We knew they were a good side, but if ever you would look at a side and say, right, they're the ones that ultimately play so much to their strengths. We kept on playing against them in that period and hammering them, and they kept on beating us.
We were very resilient and we were starting to know how to defend.
People kept on writing them off, and I tell you what, not only were they a great team, but and a very underrated team. When you talk about a team, this was a real team.
Knocking them out, I think that some of the major people at Liverpool at the time said, you can go on and win this competition.
Forest had become seemingly impossible to beat. From 26 November 1977 until December 9th, 1978, they were undefeated in the league.
People said, oh, do you realise you've won 42 league games without losing? You know, nobody had ever considered it. You know, there was no publicity thrown at it. And when it actually happened, it was, oh, we've lost. A little bit of a mishap, really, but the consistency was incredible. And that's why I think, you know, we couldn't wait for the next training session, never mind the next match.
In February of 1979, Forest added a star signing and in doing so smashed the British transfer record.
I broke the story of Trevor Francis signing, first £1 million player.
The transfer fee record at the time was 500,000, so to actually go from 500 to million was quite something.
Brian put this line out, didn't he, about the fee, saying that, you know, I didn't want him to get big-headed, so I made it £999,999. But the story goes that with levies and VAT and all this sort of thing, it was well over £1 million anyway.
This was the biggest meeting that I was ever about to experience in my footballing career. And Brian Clough was actually playing across the road. I believe he was playing with Gary Birtle's squash.
He has all the equipment needed to be a highly successful player. That's why we've invested £1 million of Nottingham Forest money.
Just a month later, Nottingham Forest were back in London for a second consecutive League Cup final against Southampton.
I don't think Clough and Taylor wanted to make such a big fuss of going out to Wembley again. So what awaited us at that particular evening was a bit of a surprise.
Next thing you know, the door opens, there's a crate of champagne, crate of orange juice, and then the manager's saying, well, everybody's got to tell a joke before they go to bed.
Archie Gamble, I think, said, listen, boss, I think we've got a big game tomorrow. I think the manager took it almost to be in sly fashion, and Taylor told him to sit down and be quiet because he was spoiling the party.
Finally get to bed at midnight, obviously playing again the next day, woke up with headache. But I think it was his way of relaxing the situation.
The game, we played Southampton, we were trailing by a goal to nil at half-time. Bit of a rollicking in the Wembley dressing room. I think it was Clough more embarrassed by what had happened the evening before and realising that this might have an effect on our game. But anyway, the team talk seemed to work. Eventually we won the game 3-2.
2 goals for Gary Birtles and 1 for Tony Woodcock made sure Forest successfully defended their League Cup title.
We had many a decent evening after that, in good company with Clough and Taylor, but I think that they never went as far again.
In the European Cup, the team had reached the semi-finals, but German champions Cologne drew 3-3 at the City Ground. Brian Clough had a message to deliver before the return leg.
He just looked right at the camera and he said,
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
And when Ian Boyer heads one into the net for us with about 20 minutes to go, I mean, it gave us such an amazing lift.
All flicked on, it's Bowyer! He's got it! Bowyer for Forest!
After we played in Nottingham, not many people thought we were going to do it, but I did.
You really thought so?
Well, I said so after the match that anybody who thought we were out of this competition was stupid.
The final would be played in Munich. Clough and Taylor were faced with some tough selection decisions, particularly over whether Trevor Francis would play. Francis was eligible in Europe for the first time since his transfer, and Martin O'Neill, although desperate to play, was struggling to be fit.
I remember it as if it was yesterday. Shilton, Anderson, Burns, Lloyd, Clark, Francis, McGovern, Boyer, Robertson, Woodcock, Birtles.
Harrowing disappointment to be left out of the final at that particular time, because you think, well, you're never going to be there again.
The opponents in Munich would be Swedish side Malmo. Francis was determined to make an impression.
I felt a little bit of added pressure because I was keeping Martin O'Neill out the team. Because of that, you know, I felt that I had to give something extra, you know, for Nottingham Forest to justify the faith that Brian Clough showed in me.
Now Robertson, who's been a revelation for Forest this season. And a chance here to take on defenders too. Still Robertson. And in goes Francis! It's a goal for Nottingham Forest!
I was voted man of the match, and I was particularly pleased with, you know, my contribution. The goal was obviously the highlight of the day, and probably the highlight of my career.
Although we'd won the trophy and were delighted to share that elation with the supporters, we were again just disappointed because the standards we set were exceptionally high and we hadn't put on the show we wanted.
Now we've got a chance next year as well. We're going to win next year.
But eventually you get back into this country and you see people at the airport waiting to celebrate with you, so it's just a wonderful, warm feeling.
I still think that one or two of us were pinching ourselves that here we were, little Nottingham Forest, winning the European Cup, but we were a good team. You know, don't ever, you know, underestimate, you know, just, you know, how good some of those players were.
Despite their status as European champions, many players felt they were denied the credit due.
A lot of the media wrote us off and said, you know, apart from Shilton and Francis, you know, the rest of them are either has-beens like myself that had been at Derby County, or, you know, players like John Robertson that, well, they've just come together and they've done okay for a couple of seasons. You know, we had unbelievably sharp football minds.
But Forest played into the critics' hands again in March 1980, losing 1-0 at home to Dynamo Berlin in the European Cup quarter-finals.
As a Nottingham Forest footballer.
Up goes Needham, and Francis could nip in here. He has. Trevor Francis gives Forest the lead. O'Neill working so hard. Francis, it's 2.
John Robertson's penalty completed a 3-1 win. Victory was sweet, and Clough and his players savoured it.
We play with discipline. We don't play with any problems with referees. We try to entertain, and you never know, John, you and your profession just might recognise that we are a good side.
Another surprise for the media and everybody else in football, but not when you're under Clough and Taylor. You know, miracles can happen.
In the semi-finals, Forest faced Ajax. They made sure they went to Amsterdam in control of the tie, scoring twice at home through Francis and Robertson. And the away leg was an experience to remember.
We get to Amsterdam, the manager says, everybody down in reception in 10 minutes. So we're down in reception. Where do you go in Amsterdam? Going for a walk.
Peter Taylor and Brian Clough decided to take us down the red light district before the game just to relax us. Peter was such a funny man that he went to one of the, well, you'd call them doormen on one of these clubs where a lot of nice young ladies earn a living, and tried to negotiate a club deal for all the players. And it was just absolutely hilarious.
It was certainly something different for a pre-match European tie.
On the pitch, Søren Lerby scored for Ajax to make the last 25 minutes uncomfortable, but Forest held on.
was a collective sigh of relief in the dressing room rather than euphoria at a second European final.
But in Madrid, Clough was missing a key player.
We had a young boy called Gary Mills, 17 years of age, playing up front because Trevor Francis, we'd lost him after the semi-final stage with an Achilles tendon injury. So we're literally a little bit under strength and we're second favourites. But we thought, well, you know, what's the preparation going to be like? And of course the management came up with great preparation. We went to Mallorca for a week with no training and no curfews before the final.
Over the years, one of the things I've taught is no matter what work you're in, you cannot do everything to the best of your ability unless you relax. The more you are relaxed, assuming you've got a bit of talent, there's no point in being an idiot relaxing if you've got no talent. But if you can relax, you can portray everything you've got to offer.
You know, to train in Calamalor, I couldn't find any grass really, and I was panicking a bit. And Peter Taylor says, when we get to Madrid, we're in the mountains, but you know, there's a lush training pitch there. You can have a couple of good sessions. That's all you need. When we got there, it was like a hard tennis court. You know, I couldn't dive around on it. I'd have injured myself, and I'm panicking a little bit because I've done no training. And I ended up. Cloughie said, "We better go and try and find some grass."
I get a phone call there from my friend who's one of the supporters going to the game. He says, "I've just gone round this island. I've seen Peter Shilton diving on this island," and I'm saying, "Yeah, probably right."
The only bit was a traffic island, you know, and I thought I've got to do something. And we said, you know, there's a couple of trees, and I got between them, and Jimmy gave me some short, quick reaction stuff. No crosses or anything like that.
His way was, been a long season, just go out, one more game, one off and play.
From the second division to a second European Cup final in 3 years, Clough and Taylor had achieved something so far unparalleled in the game. The message they'd preached since day one was the gospel again before this final with Hamburg.
It's basically, you're playing as a team, don't play individually, keep the passing going, we want to keep it on the deck, give the ball to John Robertson every chance you get because Robbo will create problems for the opposition.
And as usual, the genius John Robertson got us a goal in the first half.
They got me the ball, and fortunately for me when it came, I delivered the bit.
To be fair, in the second half, I think the dedication that we'd shown in Mallorca caught up on us a little bit, and we ended up just defending for the last 15 or 20 minutes.
We're the greatest goalkeeper in the world, brilliant defence, and we were always hard to beat once we scored.
We won the prize, the European Cup, and for me playing in the final was just an absolute dream.
It was all done and another campaign was over, and we were champions of Europe for the second time, which again still surprised people, you know.
Cup final. Undoubtedly, we could have gone on because, you know, the average age of the team was still a very good age, but in many people's eyes, the team was split up far too early.
By the end of 1981, the likes of Francis, O'Neill and Kenny Burns were no longer at the club. By May 1982, even Peter Taylor had gone, leaving Clough to try to live up to his own high standard. It was not to be. Forest did enjoy League Cup success in 1989 and 1990, but in 1993, with what proved to be Clough's final act as manager, they were relegated to the second tier of English football. But the achievements of the club from 1977 to 1980 will never be forgotten.
As far as the team were concerned, people would say then, well, what about the modern teams? What about, let's say, you against... That was the golden era of English football. That big, shiny European Cup stayed in this country 7 years out of 8.
We had the players that could hurt the opposition, but we could also defend as a team, and I think that was the great thing about our side. We could do both things.
Scoring goals is our, I don't know, it's our forte, but defending well is our speciality.
Cloughie always insisted, you are paid to keep the ball out of my net, young man. And he said, if you can create things, young Anderson, going forward, it's a bonus, but I pay you to stop balls going in my net.
I think the players I played with were fantastic players, and I couldn't single any one of them out.
You'd have to say that the fulcrum of the team was John Robertson. That's a big compliment to him, considering that we had some really, really top quality players.
They were just a great team and a great bunch of lads who gelled together, who socialised together, and they say that sometimes in adversity, if you're not playing well, camaraderie or that spirit can get you through games. It was just a phenomenal achievement for us to have done that, and feel privileged and proud to have actually done that, all that sort of thing.